So this is Kieran Paul from New Street Culture, and I'm here interviewing Sham, also known as Curly Dog on social media. Now, we've got Sham here today because she posts consistently calls to action and knowledge surrounding revolution, resistance, race and gender via both her personal platform and her book club page. Her A is for activism, more than a book club, the new vanguard, Birmingham based. Humanity, community and love is at our core. So what we wanted to understand was, why is Malcom X's presence on Marshall Street significant to you?
I think what's particularly interesting is that many Birmingham residents don't actually know that 9 days before he was assassinated by the CIA, Malcom X actually came to Birmingham to visit, and he was on this very road. And it kind of reflects to, I guess, a history of racial tension within Birmingham, because we like to pretend in the UK in particular that we live in this post-racial world, but we don't. In this road in particular, a year before Malcom X visited, the Conservative MP Peter Griffiths won the seat, and his actual campaign slogan was, if you want an N-word for a neighbour, vote Labour. So his particular stance was based on racism, and he won on that. And racial tensions in particular were so deep at that time that white residents in particular were calling for those who had money to buy up the houses from the council to make an all-white area. So at the same time, Avtar Singh, who was an Indian Labour Union and worked for a trade union, invited X to come to Smethwick in particular, have a drink, and kind of understand that the same racial tensions and divisions that exist within the US also exist in Birmingham.
What I also want to understand then is, what feeds your desire to become a community organiser?
I wouldn't particularly call it a desire as such. I think it's more of like an innate call to action. And I think for anyone who was raised, I guess, in a particular socialist family, or my whole family are full of communists, is our main mantra is based on 5 words: all power to the people. So it's consistently knowing that people power first, a collective sense of organizing all together is what's going to win our power back from, I guess, the elite that control the majority of the world.
So how has the city inspired or supported you to do this?
It's a bit bizarre because I think my earliest example of organizing within the city was actually at school. And when I tell a lot of people I went to Hillcrest School, they're like, "Ee," like Hillcrest, ee. But I remember it was like year 10, and this was like when my political awakening was starting to happen, and it was a 2-minute silence at the time, and I was just like, I just came to school that day and I was like, I'm not doing it. And I went to the black and browns girls at the time, and I was like, are you guys taking part? Because I'm not. And they were like, you know what, we're not going to honor soldiers that were killing us. And it was like this collective thing. And then, you know, we got in trouble by the school. The other white students that were at the school were really upset. I remember one girl was crying because she was telling me that her cousin was in Iraq and we weren't honoring him. And it's really ironic because my cousins were in Iraq and he was dishonoring them by killing them. And then when we actually look, I guess, at the history of Birmingham, again, a lot of young activists in Birmingham don't know Birmingham has this long history of resistance. So if you go back to 1791, the Priestley riots, where religious dissenters at the time wanted to, I guess, expel the monarchy because they were like deeply inspired by the French Revolution at the time, and they wanted to gain their civil rights. And that was crushed in Birmingham. And then 200-300 years later, you get the Handsworth Revolution, well, the Handsworth riots, as they like to call it, where a bunch of black and brown people in Handsworth stood up against the police brutality. So this has been like a continuous thing in Birmingham, from trade labor unions to miners to calls against Thatcher to calls against Israeli apartheid. Like, Birmingham is known to stand against injustice. So in so many ways it's inspired me. And then when you look at particular organizers of today, and I think it's really important to name call them in particular, you look at what Mo Salman is doing at Migrant Voice, you look at what Liz Clegg is doing at Mina Center, you look at Aliyah Hassana, who's curating all these amazing black festivals in the city for black creators. And then you look at the former owners of the Impact Hub, Emmy and Nikki, and now they own the Civic Square. But you have like a collective of really awesome people in Birmingham doing the work, and I'm just like a speck in it all. But they can't help but inspire me throughout.
How challenging has it been on this journey?
I suppose it is challenging because one, you're not gonna get all the jobs you want because your name's attached to these things. Two, you're met with resistance from, I guess, trolls. But again, because the mantra is all power to the people, like that challenge is nothing to anyone who really wants to be about it, I suppose.